All right, man, we're recording.
Hey, how are you?
Good, dude. I'm glad to see you back.
It's good. It's fun to be back.
Yeah. And, you know, we were just talking about how we've upgraded the mics in the studio to Billy Reader grade mics.
Well, I mean, if I'm going to be on the podcast, I figure you need the, appropriate level of recording for my smooth voice.
Yeah. These do just really put out an amazing quality audio. And to the things like little background things that occur, like whether it's within the room or like out in the gym, like somebody just walk, like Cora will be checking some people into yoga.
Yeah.
It won't pick that up, but like my other ones, they were more sensitive to background stuff, noise.
My old studio mic, it was a ribbon mic, and the sound quality was good, but it was so fragile as far as like plosives, hard consonant sounds and whatnot, and it was just, and it would just never liked it for this kind of stuff. And then, and it was funny because it was all these things you were just fighting all the time, little audio issues. You're always just fighting, and because you record it, it thinks it sounds okay, but then you can hear your refrigerator running, and 2 rooms over because of the little hum.
I have to unplug mine when we film for the gym, and there's a big cooler, and it kicks on.
Yeah, and anyway, so I got a couple of these, and it was just like, oh, everything that I've been fighting for like the past 2 years just went away.
We were talking about the camera switcher. I tell people this, when I started podcasting, like switchers like that, which is what, I forget the name of the one that Joe Rogan used forever, but it was like $3,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at that when I started the podcast, and I'm like, oh no, now it's like if I want to upgrade the mics, that's feasible to do. And two, I have so much other stuff in here that I can put those mics I was using, which are great mics, Shure SM58s, and then I had a couple of 57s too, on my guitar amps and other awesome stuff I got in here. I can pretty much capture audio anywhere here or in the gym and make it sound way better than my iPhone.
The thing I am looking for, and I've been looking for it for a little while, and it may exist, and I just haven't seen it or wanted to pay for it, but actually rig the boat up with GoPros.
Dude, GoPros are great.
And then
I got 2 in here.
And then, but having that sort of automatic switcher, so if I'm out doing some actual sailing, like being able to like switch with my phone.
You can do that. There is an app for, I mean, really, I can't believe how affordable that thing is. I think $299 is what I paid for it a long time ago. I saw one on like the marketplace the other day in Arkansas for $200.
Really?
And I guarantee you, so I've seen the stream decks like that on the marketplace too, and people get them and they don't like figure them out, and you can get them secondhand, and they haven't even been used.
Right.
But those stream decks, I had a smaller one, I upgraded to that one, but there's more. I've got open buttons left, but there's I can move over, and there's other like folders worth of other buttons. But man, I think about this, like that technology. I've been telling people this is the, like, I throw video up after class. Kickboxing, Muay Thai, like, hey, let's watch this fight or submission.
Right.
And I will do that, casting it from my phone onto that TV on the wall in the gym. We do that in here. And I remember when, like, all I wanted was to watch YouTube on my TV, and that shit was not possible for several years.
Right. I don't... It's those generational things where you try to convince people, like your students, like, you don't understand how good you have it. When I got out, so I graduated in 96 with a broadcast journalism degree, and I looked at buying my first video editor, and it was like a room-sized editor, multiple VCRs, multiple monitors. Priced at $1996, it was $40,000. 2 years later, everything went digital, and I spent like $3,000 for a computer that did more than that thing ever would have. And that was even before we had, broadband internet and, YouTube. Like, YouTube couldn't have existed in 1996, or at least not very well. And like that's what I tell my students. I was like, look, the thing you have in your hand and the tools that you have that are free. I'm like, you've got more communication potential, broadcasting potential than any major network had 30 years ago.
For real.
You know, multi-million-dollar corporations, you have more. You have the ability to reach more people than they ever did.
Well, and, to be perfectly honest,
Mhm.
like the quality of the audio and video on the iPhones
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
Like, and two, like I can plug in. We did this mixer has a feature on like why one of the reasons I bought it. You just plug a phone straight into it, and then like talking through the mic just like you're on the phone.
Yep.
But the quality of that, and it was just doing through the lightning adapter that the TRRS that comes with the iPhone.
And that's one of the things I've had to sort of step back. So traditionally with my classes, I make my students use what I would call real cameras, you know, legitimate,
For real, yeah.
you know, real like DSLR type video cameras or still cameras or whatever. But really, I've had to step back in the past few years and ask myself, is it okay if they use their phones? Because the quality of the video that, you know, a good smartphone can put out these days is sometimes comparable.
Cora's phone on cinematic right now, she has like the iPhone after mine.
Yep.
But because I noticed I didn't have the cinematic feature, I was filming with her phone, and I was like, oh. But it's as good as the 4K. I love that. I have these GoPros are 4K, right? When my Canons are just HDs, the Vixias, they're like lower end Vixias, but they're good. But like, to be perfectly honest, like Cora's iPhone is on par with like the best camera in the studio.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, but if you think about, like, I mean, look at how much like a phone costs. And you know, we get them for these upgrades, but it's like how your bill is, like you pay for it over time, how it's set up now.
Right.
But yeah, I tell people this: the year I graduated high school, 2006, I remember my roommate Nick going and standing in line at AT&T when it was still over like closer to TJ Maxx in Russellville.
Yep.
He's standing in line like all day to get an iPhone the day it was released. And this is the stuff like I think it would be really cool to do something. Tarver and I had a big convo just off air after I did a recording for him the other day about like the history of computing.
Yeah.
Talking about like when people had, I mean, you were middle class, maybe not, yeah, definitely upper middle class had this. If you had a second phone line, so your dial-up internet did not disable you from receiving phone calls.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was like a sign of being middle class when I was a kid. I mean, we didn't have a second line.
Like predating that, I just, you know, I remember, I remember just the friends that had actual telephones in their bedrooms. Who are you? And, you know, how do I get some of that, you know, whatever, you know, wealth that you have. But then, and then we get, you know, in the 80s, you start seeing some little personal computers popping up occasionally. You could play Frogger on if you wanted to. And, and it just keeps going and going and going. I tell my students, when I started college, I started with a typewriter. I didn't have a computer. I had a typewriter. I still have it in my office. It had a little screen on it. It was fancy because it was, they considered it a word processor.
Ooh.
Yeah, it had a 3.5-inch floppy drive on the side of it, but it was a typewriter.
See, that's what I have got it. So I went down a Steve Jobs rabbit hole and like watched all the movies about him. But it started with I listened to this book, Creativity Inc.
Yep.
About Ed Catmull. Did we talk about that? He's the president, CEO of Pixar.
Okay.
And then he took over Disney Animation.
Yep. Okay.
Fascinating how this dude's take on things. I think you would enjoy the book. I listened to it like 5 times, not no exaggeration. But that's in 1987, I think it was, because it's the year I was born. Steve Jobs bought Pixar from Lucasfilm, right?
Yep.
So Steve Jobs is coming up like throughout in this Ed Catmull book. And then I listened to Steve Jobs' autobiography, and then I listened to it again. It's really good. I will listen to it again in the future for sure. It's long,
Yeah.
but it got me super interested in the history of computing, and then also like the Mac PC feud, the development of Silicon Valley. Like, because these are all things that are kind of like occurring in the background that have led us here.
Yeah.
Like that stuff we were just talking about. Like, this is the, who were the architects of that? And, it just gets dumbed down to like Steve Jobs. It's like, yeah, but we need to talk about that dude's reality distortion field real quick. Like things like that. Like, I mean, if I was talking about Louis the 14th, I would be like, oh, this dude's my fucking Sun King, okay?
Right.
There's the wars of Louis, like all of the crazy shit that he did and was involved in. You go on forever about this guy.
Yeah.
And then it's like, since Steve Jobs' recent history, we put him in that like, you just like, oh yeah, Steve Jobs, Apple, Wozniak.
Right.
And it's like literally like you're reading 3 paragraphs in a book, like it's the back of one of the books or about the whole story.
Right.
And I think that that's something that there's a lot of room for in history scholarship.
Well, the original reason they started trying to build computers were so people didn't have to remember, specifically scientists didn't have to remember as much, and just handle the computing side of it. And so they're like, okay, if we create this whole other mechanism to do some of the thinking or the processing for us, it'll leave more room for original thought, because you're not bogged down in trying to do the math. You're just trying to come up with the ideas, and that's the whole Turing machine was kind of the original idea of it. But then eventually they got something. And then it just, it's the exponential growth. And if you look, it's the last 50 years, it's always exponential growth. It was the, I'm drawing a blank right now. It's the principle where basically processing speed and memory storage capacity doubles every year and a half, roughly. And so they started doing, what is that principle? Somebody out there screaming it at their car radio right now.
It's not me.
It's anyway. I'll think of it about 20 minutes and I'll just blurt it out.
Run off that ditch on the way home.
Anyway, but it's like and then software designers started trying to write software not based on computing capacity today, but computing capacity that's going to be there by the time in a year and a half or 2 years. And so it's just in that exponential growth. And, you get, and I do a history of communication, but, you had these huge jumps from communication technology. Dawn of mankind, people started learning how to vocalize language. And then we eventually get, you get hundreds of thousands of years and you get written language. And then you've got thousands of years and you get the printing press.
I've been on that Disney ride.
And then a few hundred years later, you get the telegraph wire. And so it starts from like these thousands-year jumps then it goes to 100-year jumps. And then it starts going, all right, telegraph wire, broadcasting. And then, radio, and then it goes to decades, and then months.
The transatlantic telegraph, like that's something that I would get into. I think it was 68 when that was laid, 1868. But like the first one had they had completed it, but it came undone. But what, you laid a cable across the entire Atlantic? Excuse me.
Yeah.
In the 1800s.
Yeah.
Like, just to think about, that's the stuff in history that always baffles me. So like another contrast I've brought this up with you, like I think we were driving back from Northwest Arkansas, and I was imagining like the Confederates that had just lost riding their horses and wagons and wounded and everything back to Van Buren, which is what they did.
And these would have been people your great-grandparents knew.
For real.
So it's not, those jumps in history aren't nearly as long as we like to think of them. Yeah, I know. It's, and And thing is, it's not slowing down. And that's the, I got an iPhone. Well, okay, let me back up. I was one of the people I got the first iPhone. I never had an iPod or any of the other stuff before it, because I was like, because I could see it was coming. I was like, once you get the convergence of all this technology, that's when I'll get it. And I remember going to the AT&T store, getting my iPhone, and they put it in a plastic bag they sealed it, and they're like, we've had trouble with threats of people getting robbed, and I'm like, you just literally put it in a plastic bag, and that's somehow going to protect my phone.
We got you, bro.
We got you covered. It's just literally a plastic shopping bag with tape on it. But it was I don't know. I remember thinking when I was kind of coming to all these conclusions that there was a period of time so my grandparents were World War II generation. They grew up primarily on print media. Television came around, but it was kind of like internet for us. For me, it came around more when they were adults. It wasn't a thing that they had much access to as kids. So you had my grandparents, who primarily got all their news through newspapers. You had my parents' generation, which primarily got most of their information through television broadcast. And then you had my generation, who primarily got most of their information through the digital means. But it's not like, now it's kind of changing, but it's not like they stopped printing newspapers once TV stations came around. And it's not like TV stations left once we got the internet. They just started stacking on top of each other. Now you're moving more into the convergence era where it all comes into the same place. But I just remember thinking, you've got never in the history of mankind have you had three distinct generations who get their communication through three entirely different means. And I was like, no wonder there's conflict. And, you've got, because just people aren't going to the same well for their information. And it's just, keeps getting segregated more and more and more. And there you go.
Yeah, no, and two, what's interesting is what got me thinking about all this is like when the very first Apple came out,
mm-hmm.
It was just a board. And the dude that was going to buy it from him was like, where's the monitor and all this other stuff that goes with the board?
Uh-huh.
But like that was not a thing yet.
Yeah.
That like putting all of these things together
mm-hmm.
had not come along, and that was not far behind. But that's what innovators blow my mind, like Steve Jobs, is that he was thinking about like the consumer perspective a lot, but
mm-hmm.
like the ways that, based off my research of this thing,
mm-hmm.
the ways that you felt when you bought that iPhone,
mm-hmm.
he made you feel that way.
Oh, yeah.
That was part of it. Like, he just thought about things. That when this dude was dying,
mm-hmm.
they brought him, like, an oxygen mask. He's like, this is shit. He would say that all the time. He's like, this is shit.
Yeah, this is...
And he's like, bring me 4, and I will choose one, and I want to provide commentary on the upgrades that I would make to it.
Right.
Like, it's like, what, dude? You're literally dying right now. And this is the way you look at the world.
Yeah, but, it's the idea that... Like, the best special effects are the ones that you don't notice. And it's people don't understand that so much of what they experience is by design. So he was really thinking of, like, how does this thing feel in my hand? Because iPhone, no buttons. Who does buttons?
Mm-hmm.
That's and everybody's like, why doesn't it have it? Just has one button. I don't get it. Like another one.
Songs in your pocket.
It's not an iPhone. But just about any car vehicle you buy today, you get in at night, open the door, light comes on,
mm-hmm.
shut the door, light stays on, you turn on the key, lights fade down. It used to just click off whenever you shut the door.
Yeah.
BMW came up with that. And because of what they wanted to do is emulate the feel of the beginning of a show. Like you go to a movie, you go to a theater, lights dim. And so they changed the user experience.
Yeah.
So when this isn't, you're not just driving a car, you're going you're having an experience now. So these little subtle tweaks that, just kind of slide below the radar. And you're just like,
I think one thing that makes like Core and I's business unique is all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm to the point that it is. Like, oh, the consumers, like, what do they want? Like, what are they thinking about this?
Right.
How are they perceiving that?
How are they feeling? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a constant, like, I think about it every day. And I think most martial arts school owners don't do that.
Well, and you can see, I mean, it's not just in technology, it's everything. And you can definitely tell the companies that are really focusing on, like, it's simply called user experience. And that's what we, when I was working in social media, as far as like designing websites and doing that, there was a term that they would use called intuitive design. It's like you shouldn't have to think about it. Mm-hmm. You just sort of know where to go. You know where to click. And sometimes you tilt the board so you get them to naturally click in a place that you want them to click or do. And you would really focus on how do they feel when this thing's done. And you can see companies that focus a lot on that and companies that don't focus. Case in point, and mostly I just want to bitch about UPS right now.
They drive through my yard sometimes, like through the grass. I had to get it gravel put under the grass.
I got back to school. I was looking for like a new like beard trimmer clippers thing, and I couldn't find what I wanted, locally. So I was like, I'll just go on Amazon and order it. And this hat. Because I need a new, because I just wear these hats till I wear them out, and then I just buy another one. And I order this thing and get the email. Hey, your package is getting delivered today out to the cabin. Okay, great. And I'm at work, and then later in the day I get an email that just says, hey, tried to deliver it to your house, and there's something wrong with the address. Couldn't deliver it. Well, that's strange. Let me go check. What maybe the address is wrong. Something's off. Nope, right address. So, all right. Well, let's call. See what's going on. And they get a call center, which is in a different country, and you're talking to the whoever.
Pretty standard.
Just pretty standard. Which okay, fine. Everybody's got people in other countries need a job too, so it's fine. But then it was like, hey, what's the deal? It's like they said that it's not the right address, but it is the right address. And they're like, I don't know. We'll just try to deliver it again tomorrow. And I get the next day comes, no package. Get another email. The address is wrong. No, it's not wrong. This goes on for a week. Like I'm literally, and I get more and more frustrated as days go on, and a little crankier with the call center folks. And I know it's not their fault, but because I asked one of them, I was like, is there a local number that I can call to figure this out? Because it's not like, because I can just go on Google Maps and find my address. It's not like it's hidden. And and they're like, no, there's not. You can't call anybody, which is kind of like the Facebook problem. If you have problems like somebody hacks your account, you're like, there's no number to call. I need to get this worked out. And so I got caught in this loop of, they're like, no, your address is wrong. But it's not wrong. And finally, like a week into it, I got another call, and I just kept on them. They're like, no, your package has been at this like customer service center for a week. They haven't actually tried to deliver it.
That happened to me
and
the same thing.
They did the same thing, and they're like, oh, and I was like, well, I'm just going to drive down to Little Rock and get this thing. And the first one goes, no, that'll cost you an extra $10. At which point I just lost my shit on this poor soul, because I was frustrated. It's nothing. These are first world problems. But you're caught in this loop that you can't get out of, and it's a user experience thing. I can't get. I'm stuck in a loop, and eventually, like later that night, they're like, we'll send a message, and and somebody from the local office is like, well, we looked for your package, we couldn't find it, which means it's probably on a truck. So it should get delivered tomorrow. I'm just like,
did it get delivered?
Yes and no. I got a phone call from him, and it just says UPS. That was the other thing. I get a call. It says UPS on caller ID. And they like, hey, is your address this or is it this? And I was like, it's this one. And that's like that other address. I went, that's my parents' address. They live about a half a mile up the road from me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting. All right. I don't know why. I was like, I don't even know how their address got in, but whatever. I was like, no, it's this. And I was like, oh, they're gonna deliver my package, and never came. Then a little while later, and later in the afternoon, I get a text from my mom. She's like, hey, we have a package here for you that was delivered here, and the package is just completely ripped to shreds. Like the box is just completely torn up. But the funny thing about it is there was a new label on it where they changed the address to my parents' address. Because I peeled it off and I was like, yep, there's my address underneath it. So somebody, I don't know who did, changed the address so they could deliver it to a neighbor because they wouldn't. And I've got a relative who works for UPS. I'm like,
I wonder if it had been thrown off of the, like the robberies and things that are going on the, like when stuff gets to the coast.
Uh-huh.
Have you looked into that?
Yeah, no, but I mean, nothing on the, like the stuff was inside was fine, but like it was like the UPS driver was just like, hey, I'm just going to show you how much I hate you right now. And I'm just going to rip your stuff to shreds.
I wonder, like, there's a lot of things like this going on. Like, the other day, like, something for the gym. Like, it was just yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I've never, ever, ever had anything for the gym from Century Martial Arts, where we do, like, 90% of our stuff from.
Mm-hmm.
Delivered to my house. Never.
Right.
One time. They shouldn't have my home address.
Right.
Yes. I set up my Century account in 2012.
Uh-huh. When you didn't live at that address.
Yeah. And then have been through multiple gym addresses, and they have always delivered here.
Mm-hmm.
But they deliver, and it had on the label my home address. But there has just been mass shipping problems. Like Century, their problem partially is they make their own belts and a lot of things in house.
Mm-hmm.
But the products that they get to make things with, one ingredient might be from wherever, and it's delayed.
Mm-hmm.
So all the belts are delayed or
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah.
But that's a micro example. Like there is, I saw this in LA. Like they're unloading these shipping containers and putting the stuff on trains to be taken to like shipping centers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they are just getting robbed as they come off, and like people are just throwing boxes off the side of these cars and things they don't want, and they're like targeting specific boxes and electronics but it just was baffling. And that was going on like later 2020, early 2021.
Mm-hmm.
But there are all of these shipping issues. And I've gone into different causes, like looking at like the, when there was that block that of things going through.
Right.
But it's like, okay, well, that was a long time ago. Shipping lanes have changed a little bit.
Right.
What do you know about all this?
One of the things I know, and I mostly think about it from the food industry. Grew up on a farm. My dad was a produce broker. My brother works for the USDA. I'm the outlier because I'm not the agri guy. But one of the things that's changed with distribution is warehouses and the lack of warehouses. In the food industry, they really, when like the rise of like Tyson and Conair and these kind of companies, they started centralizing food.
Americold.
All of these things, and so they started building these like huge centers, process and store and ship out food, all these distribution center type things. But like there's only like 3 slaughterhouses in the United States, and these things are built and they're super efficient. But the thing is, and as far as the warehousing is, like with parts, not just food, they realized warehouses aren't cost efficient. And so they started really honing down their logistics to like a part is produced, it goes on the truck, it goes straight to the store, whatever. We don't store things. Which, a warehouse is kind of like a battery. If there's a low, you've got a reserve that you can draw from until that low resolves. And so these ultra efficient, massive distribution networks that we have now, they work great until they don't. Because when they don't work and something comes in, it creates just this domino effect of just fuckery, where everything falls over it because it doesn't have any flexibility.
Yeah.
It's like a German car. It's so finely engineered that if something goes wrong, it just cascades.
Well, it's just like, here's a metaphor too. Like you put a kink in the water hose,
Mm-hmm.
and the water kind of stops running out, but it's still running out a little bit.
Right.
And then you let it go and a bunch runs out.
Right.
That was, I feel like, happening with produce.
Mm-hmm.
Like with what you're saying on shipping and distribution. Man, for the longest time, and still a little bit, it's like the produce, grapes, fruit, stuff like that I would get. It's like when it would get to my house
Mm-hmm.
or I would be looking at the store, it's like, this shit was ripe like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it got to the store too late. Something I bought, like, well, I'm always looking at the dates. Like, we'll get like some salad mix sometimes.
Right.
And it's like the expiration date is tomorrow, and I'm like, I used to work in Walmart. I'm grabbing the one from way back here.
Yep. Yep.
And it's like, oh, next week.
Yep.
You know, and but that sort of stuff. But then too, like I'll be noticing in those situations, I'm not able to find the one for next week.
Mm-hmm.
I could not find an expiration date on some yogurt I bought recently on like the outside of the box. It had been expired for like a month. And I bought it from the shelf at Walmart.
Right.
So, yeah.
Like I said, that stuff works until it doesn't work. Really, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. My gut tells me there was this really big push in the 70s and 80s to centralize a lot of these things. Like if you go around like meat packing, even now you can drive around and see all these old slaughterhouses that were like local. Everybody, every county had somebody had a butcher of some sort, some kind of slaughter facility. A lot of those got run out of business, changes to USDA regulations. But I see that stuff kind of coming back. I think especially after people have kind of sat back and watched a lot of these distribution networks crumble. The answer to that is you decentralize it. You don't just have one massive, meat producing plant in North Dakota that supplies, a third of the country. You start breaking that down. So if one goes down, you still have all the others. Mm-hmm. Which again doesn't seem as efficient, but at the same time, I think this is kind of like the same organizations we're talking about, like Amazon allows somebody to make something from their home and then turn around and sell it. So now you can be a local producer of a thing, whatever widget or gadget or thing it is, and you can turn around and sell it.
Etsy, Amazon, there's many sites.
Any of those,
like that.
yeah. And so the technology now exists that you can decentralize a lot of these things. And I think these are some of the big things like the big box stores are now having to grapple with. There are certain things you're not going to find. Well, I don't know. I'd say you're not going to buy bananas locally if you're in, the Midwest. But it's somebody may create a, greenhouse type facility at some point that they can do stuff like that. Who knows? I don't know. But I just kind of think going back to what we're talking about is kind of these evolutions in technology. I think part of what happens is kind of the horse gets away from the cart a little bit. And it's fine until it doesn't, and then you have to step back and go, all right, change is happening so fast.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how to like step back a little bit, course correct, and then move forward again. And I feel like right now we're walking into one of those times where there's increasing destabilization. I think COVID. Whatever your thoughts on COVID itself, how you saw society react, not just the U.S. globally, really put some, innovative mind will go, okay, these were the problems that I saw. How do we not do that again? How do we not run out of toilet paper? How do we not, have these little meltdowns? I don't know. That's the innovation and. But you got the technology now that can do a lot of that.
Yeah, too, like Woods and I talked a while back about technology and how it's could be applied in a better way to voting, right? Like there are all of these things in our society that we are not utilizing
Right.
for whatever reason, fear of change, paranoia of being tracked.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the number one thing. Like, everybody's like, your daddy, your daddy, your dada. And I'm like, yeah, what the fuck are they going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and I mean, I guess they could, like, blackmail me to be a spy or something, make me break the espionage laws and all sorts of stuff like that. But, I mean...
See, but that gets into that's that strange thing, especially because you don't think about, like, from the information standpoint, partially because you're an American. But, same technology gets used in a different country, so it gets used in Venezuela. And, the ruling party's like, all right, who didn't vote for us?
See, that's the big,
Yeah. And so let's just go ahead and...
Or with the Roe Wade discussion recently.
Yeah.
Like the period tracking apps and stuff. Like, there was similar sentiment surrounding that situation.
Now, the thing is, it's always the build the better mousetrap thing. So, the one level in the voting, and I get it. People are like, how do you know if it's electronic voting, if it's all computerized? How do you know it's not getting hacked and manipulated? And so, because you never know.
Concern.
You don't know how the person next to you voted. You might think you do, or the people in the next county over, and whatever. And so, it leads when that trust in that institution breaks down, you get what we saw last election.
Exactly.
Whether it's if it's legitimate or hyperbole, whatever happens, people it doesn't really matter what's true. It kind of more depends on how people react to the thing, and so that becomes a concern. It becomes a concern of retribution. Because when I was working in Mexico, when I was working in Mexico, like a lot of the people that I met were, especially the ones from Africa that were coming over, were like seeking political asylum because they found themselves on the wrong side of the ruling class. And those are things we don't really think about in a quote unquote civilized Western democracy.
Yeah, I do. This kind of all goes back. I think about things through this lens. Right now, in the recent weeks, right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm already starting to see a lot more open display of Confederate stuff.
Yep.
Right? Like, because, and then also, and I mean, there's just a correlation. Like, Trump flags, fuck Biden flags,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Like, ramping up for, like, literally, I saw a fuck Biden flag the other day.
Oh, my next door boat neighbor in Texas had one.
Yeah. So, but that stuff, it seems to really be ramping up on the trucks, like the flags. I'm starting to see this stuff.
Yep.
Be stands on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
When it's the timing of gearing up about 2 years out.
Yep.
From the old 2024, but man, I'm just that sort of stuff. It created a serious divide in society last time around with the pandemic and the riots in Wisconsin and everything, right? So,
right.
Or was it? It was Wisconsin, then it was also Michigan, or was it Minnesota?
Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the civil unrest and then the riots all across. Like, I remember being at my house on a Sunday and like looking at the lives and like all like of like people just like you and I, like we were talking about earlier, streaming live in DC and just following everything that was going on. There's this umbrella ban and literally like I was looking at the breakdown as a contested election and I'm like drawing all of these correlations between either 1968 or 1860. But like, what does a modern civil war 2024 look like, or 2020 or whatever, and how close did we come to one? And why did I bring that up? It's like, well, why are these people flying Civil War memorabilia? It's like people want to act like I'll be saying this sort of stuff and the links aren't there, and I'm like, well, damn, not only are you not flying the Confederate flag, you're flying Robert E. Lee's battle flag. I don't even have time to get into that.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like,
Right.
and if I did, you wouldn't listen. This is a real conversation, somebody I care about. Like, they were like, saying, you know, kind of disputing some of this. And I was just like, have you ever read a book on the Civil War? And they were like, no.
Because there's always been, like, within the U.S., there's always been Democrat versus Republican. And if you try, the thing I can't, it just drives me nuts when they're like, well, the Republicans are the party of Lincoln. Well, not actually, in name. But let's go back to Nixon and, doing the big switcheroo. But I heard, so there's always been competition. And fine, good, competition, competing ideas, great, perfect. But I remember hearing, and this is probably 10 years ago, maybe, I don't remember when it was, Alan West, who was then, I think he was a congressman from Texas. You still see him on like Fox News doing commentary every now and then, but he referred to the Democrats as the enemy. And I just remember like that word enemy, and I was like, that's not my distinguished opponent. I was like, that's not competitive language. That's
the other.
That is Civil War language. And I was like, I just remember thinking, that's a problem. And it's just getting ramped up. It's ramped up. And again, this snowball stuff that's just kind of coming along.
Well, this is like, well, what is treason? Sort of the idea. Like, I was talking about this with somebody yesterday. Like, what? Somebody's like, what do you think would happen if Donald Trump caught some charges with this recent thing? And I was like, well, usually what would happen is the next president would give him a pardon.
Right.
And like, we were like exploring different outcomes of like, well, what's going to happen in this next upcoming election? What's going to happen with, like if he needed a pardon now, would Biden give him one?
Right.
What if Biden doesn't get elected, but there is another Democrat in there after him and Trump doesn't win? What happens then?
Right.
Like, we're just kind of alternate reality exploring those situations. But, that's the stuff, like, when I look at history and scholars that are experts in World War I or whatever, it's like, yeah, this is the outcome no one thought about. Like, that's why it went down this way. Like, we were looking at this situation at the time, and we did not see that, that was going to be just the beginning of the end.
I read a book recently. It was one of the biographies on Hemingway. It's called Writer, Sailor, Soldier, Spy. And it's about Hemingway's time basically as a double agent. And it was Hemingway did some sketchy stuff. And part of it, and he was trying to justify it. He was never a communist, but he was a bit of a communist sympathizer. But one of the things, and I knew he wrote for like Whom the Bell Tolls about the Spanish Civil War, and I never really had thought much about the Spanish Civil War. Just not something you typically learn that much about in 8th grade.
Yeah.
History. What I didn't realize until I read that is really the Spanish Civil War was the predecessor to World War II. And it was, you had a functioning republic, and then an uprising by some generals who were fascist in nature. And then what ended up happening is all like the Western powers, England, France, mostly just sort of ignored it. Just
they do that.
Just say hands off. We're not getting involved. And so what happened was Hitler was on the rise at this point in Germany. So the Nazis started supporting the generals, and then so there's this sort of rise of fascism creeping up, and then the Soviet Union comes in to back up the sitting republic, which was left-leaning. And so what you had right there in the Spanish Civil War was really a proxy war between Nazi Germany and Russia. Hemingway got involved because, and that was one of the things he was writing. He's like, you guys need to pay attention to this whole Hitler thing. This is not, y'all need to pay attention. And he was getting really frustrated with American politicians and Britain especially, about their non-involvement. And, they're like, once this breaks loose, it's going to be too late for you guys. And then when it did, when World War II, he's like, I don't feel sorry for you. I don't feel sorry for you at all. But he started doing a little bit of a side. The predecessor to the KGB approached him and was trying to get information out of him because he was working in Spain as a journalist at the time and had access to a lot of stuff. But it was that. It was a proxy war. And so now I look at that period of time and kind of the buildup of what was going on and the kind of competing ideologies of the time. And I'm looking at today and I'm like, there's some similarities to draw from. Like
definite parallels, man. I joke with people all the time that taking Woods for espionage made me like not believe in anything anymore. Like that, and then just a few other courses like Vietnam War. Like once you like really let the cat out of the bag on somebody on the Vietnam War, and then you start looking around with like Afghanistan and Iraq, and you're just like, oh.
Well, we had this point after World War II, and once we introduced atomic weapons, all-out war between first-tier states, moved to proxy wars in other countries, and so we compete, so we don't fight on our homeland. We fight in Syria because it's just Syria, and that's
But maybe we can get some democracy over in and around there. Just maybe not there, but nearby.
Nearby.
We already got some kind of nearby.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is something that I want to know. Tarver, the reason I was doing these podcasts for him, he's going to come and do a podcast to talk about his research. But there's this big cache of Cold War Venezuela documents that have been declassified because they're 50 years old. And like everybody that is a scholar on Venezuela, which Tarver is, and but there's like these new guys that are like a little younger than me or my age. And then there's like several people Tarver's age and a couple people in between. And they're just losing their minds about these declassified documents because it's changed the way they looked at certain things, like certain thesis statements that they may have made their, and then this next batch of historians are like, oh, we're going to revise it.
Right.
And then the older historians too, they're like, oh, so are we. But man, that is, as stuff becomes declassified, I want I think it was, maybe it wasn't you, but imagine that we're talking about all the stuff that died with H.W. Bush, right? But look at somebody like Dick Cheney. Like, I want to know, I know a little bit about how he got into the White House, who he was before he was vice president, but I want to know more about, I want the Dick Cheney tapes. You got the LBJ tapes. Like, I want the tapes from that dude's office in 50 years or whenever, right? And
can you even imagine?
Imagine, imagine all the stuff that they are, I remember they released some stuff about JFK, how long ago has it been? It was like right when Trump got in office, actually. And then they were delaying releasing it, and then they did release it, but there was like a whole bunch of stuff that they redacted. I want to say like a couple of thousand pages or something.
Yeah.
But they did release a bunch of stuff too. But, what is the amount of time before the truth comes out about things like that? Because if it's 50 years and the government's still not doing it 50 years later, when are we going to see, like we saw the Emmett Till, like an arrest warrant that was never delivered that was found in the basement of a courthouse for this lady.
Right.
But she's, 80-something years old. Is it going to be like when they were putting away, former Nazis, like when they were in their 80s and 90s? You ever see that movie Apt Pupil? That's an interesting movie for plot.
Yeah.
That dude. What was his name? Brad Renfro. He died mysteriously. Maybe OD'd. Yeah. Anyway, Tom and Huck, dude, that was my jam when I was a kid. It's on Disney Plus. I watch it. I watch it sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Dude, you're a Mark Twain guy. You told me what his name means.
I did. I did.
Like, and now, like, people say something about Mark Twain. I bet nautical term.
They're like, what?
Yep, marking the twain.
Mm-hmm.
And no one ever knows. And I'm like, it's no big deal. There's a forest named after it. But
this is why I get paid the mediocre bucks.
yeah.
Yep. So.
Yeah. Man, you know, I still have not gone down the Hemingway rabbit hole, but I need to, because he does come up. Like when I was taking Gleason for like 14 to 45, I believe it was, he comes up in the notes, you know, just in mention. And then too, I had her for another class. It was like the Gilded Age and the Progressive Era. She might have brought him up then too, but like just about culture, like, you know, things that are going on. What were his years of? I mean, he drove an ambulance in World War One, right?
Yeah, so he originally tried to enlist for World War One, but his eyesight was so bad they wouldn't take him, and so he got a job with Red Cross. I think he was 19, and I think it literally lasted like a week, and his ambulance got blown up, and so he had like a bunch of like shrapnel on his leg.
I wonder if did he regret his decision?
No, I don't think. I think his big thing, and this is I think where it shows up later during the Spanish Civil War, is he really wanted to be a fighter. He wanted to be a soldier, and he just never had that chance. And so he eventually recovered.
The romanticism that comes with that is always something I comment on that is hard to understand for me. I never wanted. I knew people that wanted to go do that.
They want to go to war and prove themselves, and
or this the notion that it's an adventure.
Yeah.
Right. Like like for somebody that's never been out of Arkansas and they're 18 years old. I mean, and the recruiters, they're getting them when they're 15, 16, 17. Like, hey, you should do ROTC. Hey.
Right.
You know, you should join the National Guard when you're still in high school. Hey, we'll give you $10,000.
And then what most of them find out is it's not anything like what the brochure said. But, you know, and the thing was, with Hemingway, though, you know, he just got a little bit of taste of it. He got to see, and I think he had one of the things that it's pretty obvious about him. He loved to fall in love, and that could have been women. It also could have been things like fall in love with fishing, fall in love with the sea, fall in love with war. And he always had this thing about, you know, sort of a man dealing with suffering and rising up and being brave. And so I think he saw a lot of humanity in some of the biographies I've read about him. That's kind of where he always ends up. He's like, you see all of humanity in war, like every version of it. So he was he just really...
Yeah, that's an interesting thesis, too, because, you know, you look at things like wars are examples, but like revolutions. I've been putting together a ton of stuff on the French Revolution, and it's like there are wars going on in the background, but there's revolution going on right here. You know, but that, like, just within, you know, any institution, you can kind of look at the human experience and the tragedy of, like, I mean, I was thinking about that just like more general, just broad based yesterday. It's like the concept that, like, really nothing does last.
No.
You know, so, but, and it's like, and we're all staring that in the face every day. It's like, I saw a meme, it was by Steve-O, the Jackass guy, and it was like, basically like, you know, number one thing we have, will to live. You know, like, we don't want to die. The number one thing that's going to happen, gonna die.
There is a kind of tying, we've been kind of all over the place topic-wise, but one of the things, going back to the technology and how things change, there's a quote that it's we're organisms with Paleolithic minds living under medieval institutions, trying to cope with technology with godlike powers.
For real.
And
that's a great, like, hit it on the head. And that's why Joe Rogan, I think, is conspiratorial about, like okay, the concept of the rapture. Like, how, you know, that the way Joe Rogan talks about it, like, basically whether he's saying aliens or whatever, whoever, whenever,
The great filter.
Is going to come through the technology that we have created.
Yeah.
That will be the revelation.
We're giving birth to a new organism.
Yeah, the sex organ of the machine. That's what he always says. Like I've heard him say it like dozens of times.
Well, and it's I don't know, and it's like every civilization has to shed its skin at some point, and we've had too much change, and we're
too much too fast,
and we're just not capable of, and it's causing all this disruption. And, and disruption can be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing. But sometimes you have to go through a terrible thing before the new thing emerges. And so I'm kind of. So I've been really sort of paying attention to like the World War I era, like the 20s going into the 30s, or the teens going into the 20s, and then that'll just sort of the rise of certain kinds of personalities, kind of the same sort of conversations of what's going on in the world now compared to then. And then it's because I don't like to make Civil War comments, but it's like, when it comes, it's not if, it's when. What's it look like? And it's not going to look like 1860s.
I mean, you used to add trucks into the mix. It's already like 15 times more weird.
I think what it's going to look like is more like Ireland.
I think we actually did. I've heard this theory from you before.
Yeah, I think it's going to look like the IRA, and you're going to see it'll be more
well, and or that with maybe. There's a great documentary about the Reconstruction on PBS. It's actually a few years old, 3 or 4 years old. But I can get you access to it in my cloud if you want. But basically, they start off with this shooting in a church, a black church.
Yep.
Right? Mother Emanuel, this church. That was 2015, I think it was. But that's the links that they draw, like all the way back to Reconstruction. And, Core and I were in Memphis trying Bill Wallace 2 weekends ago, and we went and ate at B.B. King's. They had the greatest ribs. And I took a picture of the sign. We drove past the marker of and I was glad the sign said the Memphis Massacre. Right? Because the history book calls it a race riot. Like what the fuck? Like, why does the history book call it a race riot? You know what I'm saying? Like, every historian's like, it's a massacre. And then the book's like, race riot.
Because it makes, people don't get as mad.
I know, like, that's the sort of, that bothers me. But the sign said massacre, and I was like, yes, the court, this is, take picture, this is a massacre, and there's another one just like it in New Orleans. And it was really when the soldiers who had fought for the Union were coming back. And the saddest stuff, man. But yeah, like what you're saying, and it's like too, an event like Reconstruction, like the war is over,
right?
But it's like there's an Arkansas historian who talks about the Civil War in the Ozarks, the real war. But it's like maybe Reconstruction was the real war,
right?
It's like there was the Civil War. Everybody, we have pitted on the battlefield. But then there was like the guerrilla fighting that was always going on. That continued long after, and that was the number one fixture, along with the KKK and militia being stood up all over the South. That's what spun Reconstruction into this radical, just off all over the place.
Yeah.
But man, that documentary, it traces the roots of what we're talking about now, right? Civil unrest. What's the outcome of this? Like, when you do piece it all together across that timeline of 1865 to present, and you start looking at these church shootings and protests and rallies, and we're going to guard this Confederate statue, and you start putting all the pieces together, it's head scratching, to say the least. And then it's like, well, what is going to be the difference? Is it going to be bombs is the only thing we're missing? Is it going to be more church shootings, school shooting type?
Yes. There was one of the things that helps me is just to see the rest of the world. Can I find examples of things that are going on that have happened in other parts of the world. One of the most enlightening things for me to understand the American Civil Rights Movement was to go to South Africa and go to and follow the apartheid stuff, because that happened in my lifetime.
Didn't you break your camera on the way?
I did.
Tell me that story.
But I fixed it with super glue.
Yeah, that's great. You really have done that before.
But we went to this. We were in Johannesburg, South Africa, and there's a slum. See, the thing about South Africa is there's no middle class. I don't know if I've ever told you about this in the past. You either drive a BMW or you live in a slum. There's no in between. And during the apartheid era, there was it was illegal. If you were black, it was illegal for you to gather for any political reasons. The only reason you could gather was for a religious ceremony. And so there was this big Catholic church in this area called Soweto that people would gather. And so they were gathering there under the auspice of a religious ceremony, but really other political rallies. And, the police knew what were going on. And what would happen is they would, I'm trying to think how big this church was. It probably sat 400 or 500 people. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
And there's probably, and I'm just making up numbers. It was probably filled to 4 times what its actual capacity should have been. And what would happen in these moments were the police would show up every exit with automatic weapons, and they would go, "You have 5 minutes to get out before we start shooting." And what happens when you do? You take. Let's say it holds 500 and there's 2,000 people in there, and you got 5 minutes. What do you think happens? You get this mass hysteria and people stampeding toward the door, and it just turns into chaos. At which point, the police start shooting into the crowd.
This happened essentially in the Elaine Massacre.
Yeah.
In Arkansas in 1919. But they were organizing a union in a church house. But you look at the Jewish synagogues.
Yeah.
Like that's where they do everything. It's not just where they go to church.
Right. It's a community center.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then that's like, but the blending of, and we say it doesn't go on, but you and I know it does. But like churches around here are blending politics into what they say and do 100%.
Yeah.
And that's a story as old as time.
Yeah.
Right. But that there is it's a blending of these institutions, but we almost act like, oh, this doesn't go on, and the separation of this, or then you have the whole sect of people that are like, oh, we put this back in.
Right.
That the divisions with that too. Let's for a sidebar on this.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing this stuff harder than ever the last day or two with the student loan forgiveness, of which I got at least 10 grand knocked off, maybe 20 because I did have some Pell Grants.
Nice.
Yeah. But, man, there are a handful of friends I have on social media that are posting about it. We'll call them conservatives.
Okay.
Because they are.
Right.
And, man, it's just like literally I feel like I'm kind of hard-ish to peg. I'm like, yes, I have a liberal set of values when it comes to, race and, society. But then too, I'm like, I've been totally fucked over by the city government repeatedly since I've been in business.
Right.
So it's like there's this conservative side to me too.
Right.
Where it's like economics, but it's like I really don't like either group, and they're always bitching, and it's like the people who got the loans forgiven aren't really saying anything. Some of them are like woohoo, and but this other crowd is like, fuck that. It's a burden on me, the taxpayer. And I mean, yeah, but at the same time, these are the people who believe that something like trickle-down economics, which has never been proven to work, they still believe that shit works. And which, it's just kind of a conflict. It's like, okay, let me tell you something right now. If I don't have 40 grand of student loan debt, my ass is putting more stuff in the studio. I'm putting that money back into the economy, the local economy,
right. That whatever that monthly payment that I was sending off to Fannie Mae or whoever, is now going to
Nelnet.
is going to the the local music store or whatever.
Yeah, keeping them in business.
Yeah,
They closed. Olsen's did.
Yeah, I know.
I got a ribbon mic from them, and that podium over there, which I had refinished. I don't know if you've been here, but it matches the whiskey furniture now.
But so I don't know. I paid off my loans, but I don't have any. And the thing about paying off my student loans, I probably paid them back 4 times.
With the interest. That's the sort of stuff that, I do agree needs fixed with that, for sure.
But as far as the conservative crowd on that, especially the religious conservative crowd, I'm like, you remember that whole Lord's Prayer thing? It was like, forgive us of our debtors as we forgive those who have debts against us.
You always have a good metaphor on that. Like you'd use the Jesus turning over the tables one time I saw. But yeah,
there was the.
Where do you use your religious upbringing?
Do what?
Did you have a religious upbringing?
I did. I grew up Methodist.
Yeah.
So I grew up in I grew up in a fairly, call it progressive, church in a very conservative area. So grew up in Perryville, and so the Heifer Project was Heifer Project now. It's just Heifer International. Their ranch was there, and so a lot of the people that volunteered at that ranch that came in from other places would go to our church, and so I always had this kind of influence of outside people. The Yankees would come in, and Yankees, but they're all kind of a little bit on the hippie side, but because the whole deal with Heifer at that point was you could fund money, like you'd buy a goat and it would be given to somebody, and a breeding pair of goats or cows or whatever, chickens would be given to somebody in whatever country, and it was always about kind of like that teach a man to fish thing. All right, give them a fish, and then also but also give them a couple of starter fish to get them going. So that was always kind of the underlining theology of the world that I grew up in. It was like, just try to make the world a little bit better place. I always say it was. I got taught more to keep my hands dirty rather than to keep my nose clean. And so I didn't have a lot of the religious kind of problems that people sometimes do when they would come to college and experience different ideas.
That's good. I didn't really either, because I was ready I always kind of was. I was homeschooled till 8th grade, and I just basically stopped talking to my parents until they let me go receive that experience. And now legit, I think about it all the time. But my unborn child, if I have a kid in the future, I'm just like, oh, fuck public schools. What? No. What? They're doing that now? What? Just and then me working for 4 years in higher education, which the place I worked is essentially like a public school. That's the issue with it. Right. But, I look at the parts of it that are antiquated and the parts that I have a problem with, but then I think about my experience, but I've always kind of sought these other ideas and this other knowledge. I don't know, it's been ingrained in me. I realized that 12, 13 years old, I'm like, this is the way out. Information, knowledge, being able to interact with people, because that was the biggest thing I in my opinion, I was losing out on, was there was no social interaction. I had social interaction with my family, cousins, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and then my church. Yeah. And we went to a super small church for a long time. Then we went to a bigger church. The network's broadened, but still there were more people there my age, close to my age, that I became friends with. But it's back at the other place I went, there were no kids close to my age. So it's just I wasn't getting that experience that kids do get at public school. But all the time I'm just I want to send a kid there for 8 hours a day and make him sit in a desk. And this is what they're going to take away from it. And this is social experience alone, because I have tons of problems with the information they're going to receive. It's I'm going to have to end up coming back in here behind.
Let's clean this up. Yeah.
Which is fine. That'll be why they flourish, but I'm just the idea of public education from Thomas Jefferson's time to now, I'm just You still hadn't figured it out?
I'm still a really big proponent of like a classical education. And like even because I don't have kids, but I was like, if I had a kid, I would be taking that kid to as many places as I could. You want to study the French Revolution? We're gonna go to France.
See you in Paris.
We're gonna, we're not just gonna read about it. I want to take you there and get you, and that's an entirely different kind of education than sitting your kid in front of a YouTube channel for 8 hours a day of homeschooling versus or whichever. You get your own flavor. I had a former student not just complaining the other day about all the gen eds that they had to take.
I was about to go down this rabbit hole.
And it was, and I'm like, and they're like, college should be specialized. I should just have to take the classes that involve my major. And I wasted 2 years and all this money. And I was like, college has always been general. I was like, it's always been general knowledge. But I said, what you're describing is trade school. I was like, you're saying you wanted to go to trade school, not. And they're like, well, I shouldn't have to take algebra. And I don't get in arguments on social media anymore. I just don't. I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have to take algebra. You should probably be taking like economics. You should probably be taking something harder than algebra. But the thing I really wanted to tell her was just like, look, you don't take algebra because somehow you're going to use all these numbers and letters later in life. You do that because you're learning how to solve problems using certain parts of your brain, and that those processes that you're hardwiring doing those kind of math problems will translate into the way your brain functions to solve other problems that aren't algebra. But you've got those little synapses firing off. So there are things you do, like, why should anybody learn Latin? I took Latin and Greek.
Jealous.
I didn't finish Latin. Let me go ahead. I tried to take them in the same semester. That was a bad move. But I really liked it. I actually liked Latin better than I did Greek. But why would you learn, quote unquote dead language? I mean, as a historian,
Sanskrit.
I mean, as a historian, you would. All right, there's reasons you would know because this is the story of where we came from. Things and ways to think, ways to process. Okay, this is how I can understand my language better because I see its origin. It's history.
Yeah, no, that in history, those people are called philologists.
Philologists.
Yes.
That's a fun word to say.
Yes.
Okay.
And let's be real, it kind of sounds like penis.
It's a bit of a phallic sort of word, isn't it?
It is, and I will say that because in the Osiris myth, there's this part about him getting his penis cut off, and there's a whole subplot about the penis.
Okay.
And it goes far into the future of the mythology, but phallus, that's what I say. I mean, and I think that the college students did not know what a phallus was.
I don't believe it.
I mean, I don't know what an optimum word would have been. PP. They would have got that.
They would have got it.
But I thought about, like, every time I would get to that part, I'm like, all right, and then they just like never really looked up or anything. So I'm like, they don't know what a phallus is. Anyway. I don't know how we got off on that.
I started talking about Latin and Greek, and I don't know.
Philologists.
Philologists, there we are.
Yeah, the people who specialize in language, and linguistics comes up as a sidebar, but forever I didn't know there were philologists. But now it's like those words, like I hear that word a lot in like my reading and studying, and I know exactly what it means, but before I knew what it meant.
It's just a word.
There's lots of words I knew. That wasn't one of them. I just went with the ones I knew. Like that's how we work, man. We will assign meaning to all of these words, and we might not know what two of them mean. And we're receiving, reading, whatever communication.
Right.
That's an interesting trait of just think about how many people read headlines and share them, but they don't read the article.
Yeah, there's in the news world there's you have the scanners, the skimmers, and the full readers. And the scanners will just like read headlines. Skimmers will like read the headline plus a little bit, a couple of lines into it, and then the people that go all in will read everything. But all of them will share. There's a headline I agree with.
Yeah.
I'm going to share it.
You know, there was like Facebook has a feature now because there's something I like had seen and read, and then I was gonna it came across it again later, and I was gonna share it like a few hours later. And it might have been like on my work computer and then on my phone or something like that.
Yeah.
But I went to share it, and it was like, "You haven't read this article. Are you sure you want to share it?"
Ah.
And I was like, "But I have." But yeah, it was a cool. But that's the sort of stuff, though. Stopping the spread of misinformation. Well, I mean, because it could be misinformation, and you won't know unless you read it, right? Like
Maybe.
if you're just biting on a headline, like things like The Onion or Babylon Bee or whatever, like those things too. Like people were doing that with those,
Right.
like they would see something in line with like what you might expect from one side or the other. And it would, but that is, I don't know, where are you at on misinformation right now? You think we're making strides?
I don't know. See, it's real easy to romanticize old journalism. There's kind of this golden age of journalism where, and really it was actually right after the sinking of the Maine, is when like they have the Hertz Pulitzer, wars, newspaper wars. That print journalism had really gotten out of hand, and the editors kind of was like, hey, we need to reel this back in because we literally just helped to start the Spanish-American War, based off of headlines. And so they did, they started incorporating ethics within the journalism that weren't there before, because really, especially in the early days, they weren't really journalists, they were printers, and they were printing whatever they would do to sell papers. Same thing. They were looking for clicks. They were looking to make money. Benjamin Franklin being one of those guys. Had a financial interest in starting the American War, American Revolution.
Yeah.
He did.
People made Louis the 14th or the 15th actually, made chamber pots with Franklin's face on them.
Yeah, see? And then, so you go from one where you had like, prior to the American Revolution, you had like seditious libel laws, it was illegal to criticize the government. Get past that, now it's opened up. You can say anything you want. And, it's going back to the Spider-Man thing, great power, great responsibility.
Well, look at the Alex Jones thing.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
Exactly. You treat this really powerful thing, and I would say like freedom of speech versus and like freedom to own firearms. You have this freedom, but you shouldn't ever treat that thing carelessly. But now, the rise of social media where everybody, you don't have to go through a major news organization to have a podcast or, some kind of your own blog or, a Substack, whatever it is. And so sometimes the editorial review is the person who wrote it. And so, and sometimes now it's even AI that's writing it.
I see this ad all the time it's like, oh, this AI will write content for you.
Yeah. And it's so, and some of it's pretty convincing, and it's, and you get into all the things that help propagate it. And then you get into human psychology of, we share what we agree with, and we avoid the things that we don't agree with. And so we're looking for it's confirmation bias. So the question then becomes, like with social media networks, is part of the definition, are they a platform or are they a publisher? I eventually came down to the side that they're publishers, because it doesn't, like if you're uploading your book to like Random House to publish, like they're agreeing to publish whatever content on their platform. And so they're making, when they start making a conscious decision, we'll publish this or we won't publish that, the moment they start manipulating what they will, and not even like objectionable content, but we're going to push this because this is the thing that we want people, like puppies are really, we want angry cats or whatever the thing is. The moment they start turning the dials and they're like, we're going to promote that.
I get lots of puppy videos.
I get, you click on one thing and they'll push it. So they're already manipulating the content that you receive. So when like Rogan and then we're talking about being, shadow banned by maybe some of that's happening, but it's happening anyway, because they're like, oh, this is a person who writes about, I don't know, whatever the thing is. And they're like, that's not really the thing we want to hear. So we're going to turn the knob down on that. But there's these kitten photos. Turn the knob up on that. And, and that's where you get that. Case in point, I got I used to do a lot of YouTube stuff. And I used to get thousands and thousands of views.
You had like a viral channel.
I used to, I've got over, I would get like over 100,000 views on some of my content. And then magically one day it just stopped. Just stopped getting all those views. And when I would do videos, like I would put a lot of effort. I may have 40 hours into a single little 3-minute video that I posted up there. And, and it goes from getting 100,000 views or, 10,000 to 150, like the motivation to start putting all that effort. And so I got this email, it was a couple of months ago. No, it's about a month ago. Hey, we've noticed you haven't published anything to your YouTube account in 6 months, and I have a monetized account. And they're like, if you don't start publishing, we're going to downgrade you to a non-monetized account. Okay. And so I literally, because I was diving down in Key West, I was working down there. I had a little video of some nurse sharks swimming around. No, I had a video of a manatee that was, I just uploaded. It's like, oh, now YouTube wants shorts, so they're trying to get into the whole TikTok game. And then, Instagram is, I was like, let's just see. And so I uploaded this 45-second, less than a minute long unedited shot of a manatee, vertical video, which hurts my soul. Up, just immediately, like within 30 minutes, like 1,500 views. And I'm like, oh, so. And then I took another one a few days later of some nurse sharks that were feeding. I got same. Literally, I shot it. I was walking down the dock. They're feeding it. I shot the video, uploaded it and I went ahead and uploaded it to TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube just to see. And it was just immediately like thousands of views on every one of those platforms for doing that, as opposed to something where the last video I'd uploaded, it was real high. It was polished, high end. I thought it was really good. Maybe 100 views.
Well, and I wonder if we're gonna if it'll come in waves like that, right? Because like we're talking about this shorter form content, but then too, there's obviously, there's tons of videos on, and it's a search feature, 20 minutes plus, whether it's documentaries or podcast or whatever. But there is this like longer form niche. There's this also, there are the videos that are like, let's just say 3 to 5 minutes, and then there's the shorts. But I feel like we are kind of coming out of that 3 to 5 minute and have been out of it, and now we're in the shorts.
Yep.
But I also feel like people can still tap the algorithms for these others based off of what I'm seeing out there. But I don't know.
Yeah, and it's at times you're always, if you're in the content producing world, you're always chasing algorithms. And I just sort of had the thought one day. You start thinking about like Mark Twain. What would Mark Twain do if his editor goes, well, I need you to write for this algorithm? He would just he would write something really sarcastic about the algorithm just to mock it and move on with his life. It's like he's not going to, as a writer, he wasn't going to change his writing style just to fit whatever the thing was at the moment. And that's kind of where I got. And sometimes it was like, I'm not going to produce garbage and just add to more garbage that's already out there. It's cool or not. I'll do little things here and there, but as far as going back to the platforms, like they're dictating what we see. Like it or not, they are, with some little AI. And I don't think it's anything nefarious per se. It's all about what grabs people's attention, and they've got enough AI to know exactly what it is they're looking at. So when I post a picture of a manatee, I'm sure some AI thing recognized that as a manatee. Or when I posted video of a shark.
I want to see the barracuda that was swimming under the dock.
See, that's I've got to get a GoPro. That was such a good story. That was.
I've thought about that a few times, and like I even said something to Cora, I'm like, this is why I never get in the water.
It was, yeah. So for those who don't know, so I spent the summer living in Key West, and I got a job diving and cleaning bottoms of boats and doing maintenance on boats, which is cool. I scuba dive 5 days a week. You see, and you get to see the world from underneath, and you kind of I feel sort of like an astronaut. That's what's telling you. You kind of feel like an astronaut when you're scuba diving because your buoyancy is, if you do the weights right, you're like neutral buoyancy, so you're just sort of floating, and you're breathing through. We're using air compressors for this job. But yeah, I swam out to this. I was cleaning a little swim platform at a little private beach at a resort, and it was probably like a 15 by 15 platform, not real big, and cleaning all the barnacles off so people crawling up of it don't get cut up down because it floats. And I just was, what is that? And I thought it was a big tarpon because the tarpon there are huge too. And I was like, oh no, look at those teeth. Oh, that's a big Okuda. And yeah, he's just hanging out in there. It's probably 6 feet long, just big as me, just hanging out. And I was just like,
the first thing I did was Google, do barracudas attack people?
Because I had people were like, I hope you weren't wearing anything shiny. I'm like, doesn't matter if I was. It's not like he didn't know I was there.
Yeah.
But he was just, he was hanging out literally in a shady spot underneath the, staying out of the sun. And I was just thinking, yeah, there's all these people swimming around me. And they're having a good time. They're sunbathing up on the platform. They have no idea what's right here. And it was, he didn't care.
The stories that I've read and heard of people that just on video have read accounts, like primary source of World War II, but like people that were in the Pacific that are like out and there is nothing. There's just them on the boat and the things that they would see at night. Kind of come up to the surface, whales, you name it. But like shine lights down into the water, be like a calm night, like just glass surface, and man. And then you think back to like even going back to like Columbus, like some of their reports of the sea creatures they were running into.
It was two different people. One was a Marine. Both of them served on ships, 60s roughly. One was in the Navy, one was a Marine, but they were talking about like I think they're both aircraft carriers too.
That's the ones I hear the craziest stories on for whatever
reason. They threw like a side of beef. It was both two different people who don't know each other told these stories, and one of them was a side of beef that had gone bad, and they just tossed it off, and then they just watched. I guess it was a white shark. I don't know what it was, but they saw, and a side of beef is big. They just saw a white shark just hit it and just it's gone. Like it just cut it right in half. And it's like just like a bass hitting a lure. Just like as soon as it hit the water. And then another one was about a barracuda doing basically the same thing to a side of beef. Just punched a hole straight through it. Just like, okay, well, that's kind of the other cool thing about being doing the scuba stuff is I am not the apex predator in that world. I am a quiet observer, and hopefully everything gets along with me.
I'm sure nothing like that. Yeah, I joke with the students out here all the time. I'll tell some like morbid story or like we've been showing like nasty submissions in fights. Like we've been going over submission defense, and I'm like, watch what happens when you don't defend. But after I get done going into this, I'm like, this has never happened to us. And they're just like, because man, like I look at Cora will be like wanting to get me to do kind of crazy. She's a thrill seeker. She'll do anything. Loves. Like there's like some roller coasters that I just would not go on with her.
Right.
And I'm like, nah, that one's too much. It's too. But I'm like, why take the unnecessary risk of the barracuda? I personally don't need the barracuda.
I first day of that job, and I hadn't been scuba certified very long when I got it, and most of my stuff is all done in freshwater. It's my boat. I would swim around my boat stuff. It was all snorkel. But I would, first day, the guy was like, don't worry, the bull sharks don't come out till like 3 o'clock. And we're getting in the water like at 7 a.m. And at like 4 o'clock, I was still in the water that day. And I just remember, today's the day I die. That is it. I'm just, because, when you're cleaning, so the way you clean these things, I literally have a sawed-off plunger, like the handle's cut in half. And I use that to hold onto the boat. So you're always looking at the hull of the boat. And then occasionally you just, I feel like I need to turn around. And you're always waiting to see what's going to be like, just sitting there looking at you when you're, because it's a big old ocean out there. And there's no gates out there to keep anything out.
Aren't there tons of gators around Key West?
Not there. There are further up Keys, but in Key West, there's not. I haven't seen. There's salt, because Florida has saltwater crocodiles and gators. Yeah, mostly the big stuff I was swimming around were nurse sharks, which are, they're the ones you always see people swimming with. But what would happen in tarpon, and tarpon will hit, like I threw my hose in there and a tarpon like hit the hose like hard, like trying to bite it. And so I was like, oh, okay. Now I just know, slide into the water slowly, don't jump in, so they don't mistake you for a quick bite. Yeah, because all these things have teeth.
Well, I've seen like on diver cams, you like talk about like looking around behind you. It's like, how far is your visibility?
In Key West, probably like 20 feet.
Okay, yeah.
And like at Corpus, it was like 6 inches.
Yeah, see, so like in that lower visibility, but like when you see like something come out at you, it's just like, whoa.
It's right there, yeah.
You literally are parrying it if you don't want to get hit.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was kind of because you don't know how you're going to react when you see stuff. I jumped in to clean a sailboat one morning, and it was still early. It was before the sun came up, so it was still, early dawn. And, that's one of the times you really don't want to be in the water. Those are feeding times.
Found out about that?
No, it wasn't that bad. It was just big. It's like this big old sailboat. It's like a 60-something foot sailboat, and I had to dive down to check the. So, saltwater, you keep anoids, zincs on boats, and so basically there's always electrolysis going on, and so these are basically sacrificial lambs to keep it from eating up the metal parts of your boat, and so they get eaten up, you have to replace them. And so I was going down to check to see if they needed to get replaced. And I got down below the keel, and the keel on this thing, keel is as big as this table. And I just get down, and I just look right below me, and I just see sort of a little wiggle. And it was like a 6 foot, it was just huge. It was probably bigger than that. It was a huge nurse shark. But everything was it was still dim. I couldn't tell it was a nurse shark. All I could see was the shark, because there's a very distinct shark outline. But it was just and it just sort of wiggled, let me know that it was there, because it was just sitting on the bottom. And I was just like, hey, buddy, I'm going to leave you over here. I'm going to go way over here. So when you decide that you've had enough and it's time to go, you just go.
How deep is the harbor?
Mostly 10 to 15 feet. So it's not too bad. And the water's clear, so typically you can see until... when you start swimming and cleaning, you kind of cloud things up. Well, mostly it's pretty clear. Some of the places, some of the fun ones to dive are like out in they have a lot of houses on canals, and so those get to be deeper, and so you can dive down, look for lobster and other critters. So,
freaking me out, man.
Right. I don't know. It's one of those. It's sort of weird. Like when I first started diving, I had to get used to being underwater, because everything in my brain was like,
it is. It's so like I was saying about you breathing.
Yeah, because you're like, this is you, because you're looking up and you're at the surface of the water.
How conscious is breathing underwater on a tank like that versus like I guarantee you, we hadn't really thought about breathing since we've been sitting here.
No, when you start, I'm very conscious of it. And if you're using a tank, then you've got a dive watch. You've got to pay attention to all that, because if you're breathing too hard, you'll go through your oxygen too fast, and so you really have to learn to control your breathing. When I was using an air compressor, so I could just breathe as much as I want. But at first, it's kind of nerve-wracking. And so
have you had anxiety doing it before?
Right in the very beginning, the very first time I ever dove, when I was getting trained. I literally just had to kind of go down, sit on the bottom of because we start in a swimming pool. I just had to sit there and just sort of close my eyes and try to just be in a meditative state. Because the very first time I ever tried to I just borrowed somebody's regulator and just kind of stuck my head under, and it was real murky water, and I was just like, nope, nope. You get this, you really kind of get this claustrophobic feel in some.
Well, there's some similarities there with jiu-jitsu, but I don't want to go get in the water with
and it's just, and you just sort of, but eventually, like what I just got to be, I was really relaxed. I would dive for, 7 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
That's wild.
And, like.
When's the first time you dove?
Last spring. I mean, well, the first time I ever tried to dive was a few years ago. Just, we were hanging out with some people on a boat, and they had a tank, and I just tried it out, and I was like, but that other, like when I first got back in the spring, when I knew we were going to go to Key West, I decided to go ahead and get dive certified. And because I'm in Key West. And, I just literally just had to go sit on the bottom of the pool and just sort of like, just sit there and just sort of breathe and force myself not to panic. Because everything in you're screaming you're in the wrong spot. But, by the end of it, I didn't even think about it at all. It was just, you just get down, throw your stuff on, slide in. You get that little moment of disorientation when you go from being above water and you're sort of looking around. All right, is everything cool?
So here's something to think about with that. I had this conversation with somebody yesterday who's in psychology. So there's that idea, and I subscribe to it in jiu-jitsu to an extent. Like that if we do this thing that makes us uncomfortable, that we will not be uncomfortable. Right. Like that, and it's like, I just do more of it. But that's not a universally applicable thing. Like we were talking about some instances, like there it makes sense. Jiu-jitsu, do more jiu-jitsu, roll more. It makes sense. Right. What about this? Like what about you're trying to tell someone that it's not okay. Let's say they were on a school trip and they're asleep and they wake up and somebody is rubbing their inner thigh. But you don't have that person's inner thigh rubbed
to get them
to teach them about that.
I feel awkward just talking about
Okay, but so we were using that comparison for this. A student here that moved here from Idaho is a purple belt. She's a school teacher at a local school, and they're doing firearms training. Drills, active shooter drills, stuff like that. And part of the training, and I could tell that it was like, it wasn't like she was like super disturbed by it, but like I could tell that, it was like some discomfort there. And like when she was telling me about it, but like part of the training was you have to hear what it sounds like when a gun goes off in the hall while you're in your classroom.
Okay.
But, it's like, at what point is it like what you're saying, like I'm going to sit in the pool and get over this, or I'm going to do jiu-jitsu and get over this, and then trauma. Right? Because I'm going to argue that hearing that working in the school and then the school saying like, you need to hear shots going off is a part of your job. That's traumatic.
It can be, but I get the logic though.
I do too. But I also put it in there with the rubbing the thigh.
I'm not sure I would put it in that same category. Part of it is because I had law enforcement training. One of the things, and I did my when I did my master's thesis, it was on school shootings. One of the things that happens almost universally is when that first shot goes off, people try to turn it into something else. That was just somebody kicking a trash can. That was just a door slamming. And they don't, like, unless like, if you know that sound, like, you'll hear, like, one of the things I've heard soldiers, military guys who have gone to places where they encountered, like, AK-47s being shot at them, like, they know that sound. Like, they know exactly what that sound is. But I think there's a point, though, where you have... I think hearing that gunshot going off after you've already experienced may be traumatic, but it's sort of like, all right, you're going to, it's kind of prepped a little bit. you're going to hear this.
I mean, I get that logic.
As opposed to just, hey, by the way, in the middle of, your prep hour, we're just going to start shooting a bunch of blanks out in the hall. That would be traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
I think how you go about doing that would be a better, but still.
It's just, and I get it. Like, I do get it. But then, like, for example, how many school shootings have there been in Arkansas?
Oh, several. I mean, Jonesboro was the first big one.
Yeah, that's and that was like right around Columbine.
Yep, 1998.
I mean, would we say less than 10?
Yeah.
Less than 5?
Mm-hmm.
So why subject every teacher
That's a good
to
question.
that? That's the side of it I see. I'm like, but then I get too. It's like, okay, it's probably not going to happen to all these people but then too, you want to safeguard against it because it is happening elsewhere.
It falls under that category of thing of the way that people respond to violence. Think about how people respond to like natural disasters, like a tornado. I mean, some people get super anxious in storms.
Mm-hmm.
Some people walk out on the front porch.
I'm that guy.
But there's, it's the thing about shooting specifically. Do you remember the DC sniper?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
That thing had, a well-publicized serial killer will have people just absolutely losing their mind because it's this idea that it's random and also targeted. And we make some kind of distinction in our brain between, even though the outcome between getting hit by a hurricane is the same, or your house burning down or something.
Yeah.
The outcome's the same, but our panic level and I guess our fight or flight response goes way up with this idea of a potential threat. So I don't know. I mean, because people don't get as panic, statistically, it's far more likely that you're going to get killed in a car accident. But we're not in that panic mode for that. So I don't know.
Yeah, too, here's another thing. Like, I was only speaking from the side of, like, social and intellectual experience on education earlier when we were talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is, like, a whole other side to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because, like, I do look at it from both sides. It's like, okay, yeah, sending, your child into that environment while the teacher's going through these drills. And it's
right.
like, is that something you want to do?
Right.
And that is, this weird problems that we're having that I don't, I think, to be honest, and it's controversial still, but I think the best idea I've heard is like, okay, you have a core group in the school,
mm-hmm.
and they are trained every year,
mm-hmm.
5 or 6 people. They're, maybe one of them's the IT guy, maybe one of them's, she's a geometry teacher or whatever.
Right.
These people that, like, they're the people in the school that would conceal carry anyway, that are into, self-defense or
right.
whatever. Like, having a core group like that, I like a lot more. Or just, like, providing security for the schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but then again, we, like, can't even really provide super solid food or information for the schools. So, or teacher pay, or, and then that's a whole other thing. It's like, oh, if you want me to hear the blank go off, we're going to need more money.
Yeah.
This is another thing. Like, these teachers that have been in for a long time are like, that have gone through this, like, now this is the norm.
Now we're at this point. I remember when that came out, the first, like, arming teachers, I'm like, it's okay if you train them.
Yeah,
it's one thing to be shooting at a piece of paper at a gun range. It's something else to be be in a combat scenario with a lot of innocent people around. Those are two entirely different scenarios. In one, you're going back, you're pumped up with adrenaline. Unless you've been trained to deal with that, then you're going to have a tough time. But again, there's the thing with teachers, and I would say law enforcement too. So there's a whole lot of a society that we just keep tossing on their backs because they'll just do it. Y'all take care of that. Y'all take care of that. By the way, we're not going to pay. You don't get a raise this year either. But here's another thing. Here's one more thing. It's math teacher's not just a math teacher anymore.
Like a counselor.
Yeah, it's all of it.
Protector. Oh man, but yeah, that is well, and then too. So like, I think that a direction we're headed with like some students here of a local doctor, and they were homeschooled for a long time, but then they started going to like RHS Virtual Academy. And they get to like have the whole experience. They play sports, but they do everything from home.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but they get like that social experience of like sport, band.
Right.
There's certain things they have to show up for. But I mean, we talked about this a little bit last time we chatted. It's just like what's the future of these courses, which we think everybody should have. The gen ed courses or the K-12. And how is it going to be administered in this technological future? Yeah. Who knows?
It's the kind of everything we talk. It's the rapid pace of innovation.
When we can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, it's because we're it's the Paleolithic brains or minds living under medieval institutions, dealing with technology with godlike powers. And what we're dealing with is all the fallout from that. Whether it's logistics and shipping routes breaking down, to school shootings, to disinformation. It all comes back to the same place.
What was I seeing? There's something after we talked last time that yeah, that's it. I saw some of these documentaries, and it's like I believe a book series too. But you were talking about a podcast you'd listened to, or maybe a documentary you'd seen. But there's like the History Channel did some like short little documentaries about like pigs coming from Spain and how all the conquistadors grew up being pig farmers. And then Lord of the Flies dropping off the pigs on the islands and swine flu and all of this. But yeah, Guns, Germs, and Steel. They had like a little, I guarantee you they're getting off this dude's thesis here. Jared Diamond. But some real interesting points on that thesis though. But like it just about how much of those things have changed everything. Like, well, school shootings, guns, steel guns. But yeah, like, well, we're in a pandemic. Germs. Better wash your hands.
Yep. All of it.
It is. Yeah, that's another one of those things. Like what I was saying with Steve Jobs, it's like you're like, oh yeah, well, here's what happened. The Spanish came over and then they wiped out the native population. Their diseases. But that's it. That's all that's said.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now, I remember that conversation because I was talking about the history of slavery.
Yes, yeah.
And it was like the 2-minute version was, basically the Vikings finally created better ships, and then the European countries adopted those ships, and slavery was really popular. Pretty much globally. It just whoever the defeated people were at the time became slaves. It didn't matter if they were from Norway or Germanic areas or whatever, and they started running out, but they never could. But the thing about Africa is they couldn't get across the Sahara, and the ships allowed them to circumvent the Sahara Desert, and they found a well-established slave trade in sub-Saharan Africa. And they just tapped into that, and so it was already there. People are already selling folks, and
it's a net. Yeah,
it was already an established network, and they just it's again logistics. And then what was happening is because they were trying to use this was all happening about the time conquistadors are hitting South America, and the problem they couldn't keep indigenous folks as slaves because they kept getting sick and dying, and so they just it was decimated the population. And the unfortunate luck of the sub-Sahara population is they were immune to European diseases. And so that's how you ended up with black slaves in the Americas. It was like, oh, they could still survive.
Yeah, it's a bigger triangle than a network of,
Yeah.
that you're given. Like, because that's like,
Yeah.
we talk about the triangular trade network.
Yeah.
You know, and we talk about slavery, and we talk about the spread of disease, and rum running.
Yeah.
And it got, but man, it's like, so far on the other side of that is like the bigger picture. You know, I mean, I've been out of grad school and then worked for a long time. 2015, I think, is when I graduated with my master's, and then I taught for 4 years. But the stuff I figure out, like the deeper part of like everything that you would glean from a U.S. History 1 or 2 class, you know, it's kind of mind-blowing how you're just scratching the surface with that little 3 sentence on that. And it's that with everything.
Yeah. You know, when you're trying to cram so much, you lose all the nuance. And actually, it's not just nuance, it's the richness of the actual story. You're just, you know, when it gets distilled down to a headline, you don't get any of the rest of it. And, you know, and it's the rest of it that really kind of gives you context to understand, like, oh, this is the way the world works.
So what we're saying is that we didn't read the article. We just shared the
We just shared the story.
That's
we just shared the headline.
The headline is like, indigenous peoples die from Spanish disease. And we're like, share.
That's it. So.
Oh, man.
There's a. Yeah, and there's a lot of it. And that's because when you talk about, like, the American Indian Wars, like, we didn't fight the American Indian Wars. What really happened is we had fights with what was left of the original nations.
Are you talking about like with the new Predator movie?
No, but I kind of want to watch that.
I did watch it.
Did you? Was it all right?
It's okay. I thought, man, that was like set in like 1715 or something. And I just wonder how many horses the Comanche had at that time. I need to look into it. I mean, the Spanish got here, you know, 1500s, like 1540s, 1541 DeSoto's in Arkansas. The Comanche were so good on a horse by the time the Texas Rangers come in that they could not shoot their horse without the Comanche landing on their feet.
Did you read the book?
Oh, twice.
Yeah.
When? I even listened to most of his an autobiography on Stonewall Jackson. For some reason. I was like, I'll check it out. Just because, I mean, I really wanted to see if it was like Lost Cause-ish.
Yeah.
Like if it was like a deification of Jackson. And I thought it was a pretty fair treatment. I need to finish it. I've still got a ways to go.
Okay.
On it. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I heard, who was it I was listening to? It was I was listening to a podcast with a couple of historians, and they were trying to come to the. Oh, it might have been. Maybe in Hardcore History. It was the Hardcore History Addendum. I can't.
Yeah, his Addendum podcast.
Yeah, where they were just knocking around the idea, who exactly is indigenous, and they just started going around, like, you know, global populations of, like, you know, folks in Egypt are not originally from Egypt, and it just globally, and they were like, all right, so if you take, we'll just call it morality out. Does a region benefit or have a demise because they were conquered? You know, and I think that specific when they were talking about it, Egypt probably benefited. But I don't know. It was just sort of interesting to watch them.
Carlin has a cool point, and he's getting his thesis from someone else, actually. But I don't remember who the original thesis was, but it comes up in other research that Egypt was the crown jewel of empire. Like, Egypt was like, a lot of historians say Egypt was the first empire in the ancient world. And then it's all the rise of all these other empires between Egypt and Rome. You know, you got the Greeks, you got the Persians, you got the Assyrians, like all these ascendant empires. But that all of those I mentioned added Egypt to their empire. And the way they viewed Egypt was like a crown jewel. This is another interesting one. I'm getting into Edward Said. I cited him in my master's thesis, but for a book called Culture and Imperialism. But he basically is the cultural appropriation guy. He wrote these books in the 80s, those ones called Orientalism. And I just finished this book on Napoleon, Egypt. And basically, like, here's the gist. Like, Napoleon and his guys get to Egypt, and they're like, where the fuck is Cleopatra? This ain't Cleopatra's Egypt. This ain't the Pharaoh's Egypt. Y'all ruined it. Kill them. Like, it was kind of like that, because it's like they had been taken over by this group called the Mamelukes that were kind of henchmen for the Ottoman Turks. You know, but like then they like end up invading the Holy Land. And they're telling everybody, like, look, we're good Muslim people. Like, but then, like, they're raping and pillaging and killing people and taking their harems. And it was a weird time. But, like, the sentiment was, you ruined the way I think about Egypt. Like, I read these accounts of Egypt, and you're here, and this is not what I read about, and you ruined it. Like, that's, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the guy's thesis, is that he basically calls, like, what France and Great Britain did in the colonial era, but, like, Egypt being an example, is, like, the greatest cultural appropriation of all time, dude. The Rosetta Stone's in Denver. You want to go touch it? You know what I'm saying? Like, and, you know, there's this big discussion about... it might be the Sphinx's beard. There's some antiquity that, like, is off in some other country, and then the main piece of it's in Egypt. And I think it's the Sphinx's beard, but I could be wrong. And it's like, could we get back the Sphinx's beard and, like, put it on? You know, and, like, they've done stuff like that before.
Right.
And, but then they're like, well... You know, that would be good. You know, if we gave it back, that would be good. But then, you know, if it's a Sphinx's beard, where does it stop? You know, the Rosetta Stone, we got to get that back too. And I get it.
There's a whole lot of British museums that are suddenly going to find a lot of empty space.
Oh man, but that too. This is something. You know where museum comes from? The place of the muses.
Okay.
Right. Those things that were helping you with your videos.
Yep.
It still took 40 hours, but
but
that's an interesting, like I was talking at a philosophy professor on, you should listen to my last podcast I just released last week, Bill Aiken. He knew Charlie Bush super well, taught at U of O, but man, we got off on Socrates and everything. You would, I think you would enjoy it, but I forgot the point I was connecting with Bill Aiken, some philosophical point where
we were talking about, you know, taking all the Egyptian treasure and sending it back.
Oh, yeah, just cultural appropriation. That's what I see it as, not like somebody sees my shirt I did for the gym with the skull and the headdress as cultural appropriation. I'm like, it doesn't have skin. Like, it's a skull wearing a headdress, you know? And you assigned an ethnicity to it. It's weird how people are, though. Anyway.
That it is.
Well, dude, I'm going to kind of wrap it up.
All right. I got class here in a little bit, so I'll...
Yeah, 110 is a nice little 2-hour combo, bro.
It works.
But
especially since we plan on going 90 minutes.
Yeah, well, you know,
it
happens. A bonus.
Happens.
Do check out that last podcast. So
Okay, will do.
I've thought about it several times. This is a great conversation, but that was too, so I'm on 2 in a row.
Okay.
And I'm lining up some longer distance guests also that I'm really excited about.
Well, I'm heading back to Key West next. Well, I'm actually heading back to Texas next week, but Key West shortly after that.
How long until you come back again?
I don't know, sometime, probably November, I'm guessing.
Okay.
But I'm taking all my podcast gear down there, so I can see if I can find some cool Key West folks and take the Pirate Professor podcast on the road.
Yeah, that's what I really enjoyed doing these interviews with Dr. Tarver with all these different historians from all over. And we did one in English and Spanish. So, but I'll do one with him. We are, like, he just finished his last one, and I'm getting him booked to talk about all that.
Okay.
So, declassified documents.
Nice.
All right, signing off.
All right, man.